Hello and welcome to episode 287 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan, as always joined by Evan Silva. He has a new computer. He has a new mic. He has a new camera. Evan, good afternoon. Welcome to the 21st century, my beloved boomer. How are you?
Good. I also, on Monday, I was doing box jumps and I pulled my back and I could barely get out of bed today. I mean, it was horrible. And then Daigle, I'm struggling to move and everything. And Daigle's like, dude, you're fine. It's not that bad. I'm like, yo, man, you're not feeling this pain right now, just has no sympathy for me whatsoever. But yeah, the setup is looking good and we're ready to move forward.
You're way too old to be doing box jumps, let me tell you. I mean, if you can't get a computer set up correctly, you can't be doing box jumps. I'll say that.
Yeah.
On today's show, and each Tuesday this season, we go team by team, highlighting the most important things we saw from a fantasy perspective, any key takeaways we have. Before we get into it, two things. First, we are indeed still running a mid-season sale. Get access to our entire NFL product, projections, ownership, shows, props, Discord, everything from now through the Super Bowl for just $149.99. Second, this show is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks.com. You guys know me. I am neck deep in the player prop streets. Unfortunately, many of you in places like New York, California, Texas, ton of other states don't have regulated sports betting. PrizePicks is legal and regulated in those states. If you want to give them a try this week, they have a 100% instant deposit bonus up to $100. Use promo code ETR to get the best deal, or use the link in the show notes. Again, promo code ETR at prizepicks.com for the instant deposit bonus and the best deal. All right, let's get to it with the NFC here, Evan. And the Arizona Cardinals once again played without Kyler Murray. They once again played without New Hopkins. This time was a far different result, though, as they got wrecked by Cam Newton, PJ Walker, and the Carolina Panthers. One thing I noticed, and I played James Conner, and James Conner got there with a touchdown, and his touchdown rate has been so absurd this year. But Benjamin was playing early. I mean, before the game got out of hand, even 2 out of the first 6 running back carries did go to Benjamin for what it's worth. It's hard to have a lot of takeaways, though, when Arizona was missing so many guys and the game was such a blowout. What'd you see out of Arizona?
Yeah, I mean, this is typically the case with what happens with backup quarterbacks. Colt McCoy, throughout the course of his career, he'll have a good game or two here or there, but as the sample size grows, Colt McCoy gets exposed, and that's what happened here. I mean, they really couldn't move the ball offensively, and it was just a really bad game. And I mean, on the other side, and we'll talk about the Panthers played a really good game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's the Cardinals need back their studs. And I don't know, what's your feeling right now on whether they are going to be back?
So Cliff said it'll be close. I mean, it sounds like they've been kind of game time decisions each of the last 2 weeks. And that kind of makes me think they were like, hey, let's let you guys sit out ahead of this big NFC West matchup. They're playing at Seattle this week. Russ is back, so it's a pretty big game for them on Sunday at Seattle. So I think that both Kyler and Hopkins will be back personally.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that Colt McCoy, he also suffered a pec injury in the game.
Yeah.
Jay Glazer's original timeline for Kyler was 1 to 3 weeks. This would be his 3rd week missed. They do have a bye forthcoming, though, I believe. So I don't know. Maybe they could work around that. But I mean, in that case, they'd have to start Chris Streveler. Yeah. This is a critical division game. Yeah, I think that they're probably going to push him to play.
They have a bye coming up after the Seahawks game, correct? So we'll see. Yeah. But yeah, we'll break down more of the Arizona stuff because it will be an interesting spot for them if Kyler and DeAndre Hopkins are able to come back. Atlanta. They play this Thursday game against New England. Looks like they will not have Cordarrelle Patterson. Cordarrelle Patterson hurt his ankle early in this game, came back briefly. Then the game gets completely out of hand. So again, hard to have takeaways here, but I did notice Wayne Gallman, playing ahead of Mike Davis a bunch, finishes 15-4 in carries for Gallman ahead of Mike Davis still. Even in season long, I'd be really hard pressed to play Wayne Gallman or Mike Davis, even with CPAT out against the Patriots. What did you see out of the Falcons, who just got absolutely wrecked by the Cowboys?
Yeah, well, I mean, the big thing now is that Cordarrelle Patterson has this, quote unquote, mild high ankle sprain. He was listed as a limited participant on Monday's practice report. They didn't actually practice, but they would have expected him to practice on a limited basis. I guess that creates some hope, but it sure seems to me like he's unlikely to play on Thursday against New England. Just another poor offensive effort from Atlanta. Just got spanked by Dallas. We kind of saw that coming.
Yeah, I wanted to get your take on a tweet that Ian Hartitz had per PFF, per Pro Football Focus. Kyle Pitts, 1.85 yards per route run versus cornerbacks this season, which is not great. 3.04.
It's not terrible. It's
not terrible. Not terrible. 3.04 yards per route run this season for Kyle Pitts against safeties and linebackers. So again, the kind of thing that we've been talking about, it's great that Kyle Pitts is playing wide receiver. It's bad that he's matched up against corners a lot. So like if we can identify when he's going to be covered by safeties and linebackers, that would be a big edge. I'm not sure we can identify that before games, but yeah, I don't know if you saw that tweet or you have any thoughts.
Yeah, they might need to get him playing more on the line of scrimmage then.
Yep.
To keep him away from the corners. We think of it as a great thing when tight ends are playing out wide all the time, but they can get better matchups when they're playing off the line of scrimmage. Kyle Pitts played a ton on the line of scrimmage at Florida. So, it's definitely something that's in his bag.
Let's go to the Carolina Panthers, and it was really good to have Christian McCaffrey back in almost a full sense. Christian McCaffrey had 26 DraftKings points, which is a lot. Didn't score a touchdown. Didn't get the 100-yard bonus. Got vultured by the goal line 3 times. Lost 18 carries to Chuba Hubbard and Amir Abdullah. Christian McCaffrey, last week, the week before, he had 19 touches on 29 snaps. The dude is just like so far and away the best fantasy player. It's not even close. Now we get Cam Newton under center. I'm expecting Cam Newton to start in week 10. Would you consider starting Cam for any season-long people? And how do you think Cam affects DJ Moore, Robbie, CMC, et cetera?
He's definitely a starter in 2 quarterback and super flex. He's probably not a top 12 option though in season long. And so I certainly wouldn't be excited to start him. We only saw him for a few reps here, but he was productive on his reps. And, he's not a guy that, I don't think they're going to, give him a full playbook. And I think he'd be just fine knowing, partial part of the playbook because he's such a dual threat. He certainly can still run. I thought he looked good in the preseason as a passer, and the reports on him from training camp were that he was playing pretty well as a quarterback and now as a passer as well. And now, you asked the question, well, why wasn't he signed then yet? And it was because everybody had their starting quarterbacks, and you don't want a big time alpha who can, just pull the locker room in his direction like Cam Newton as a backup. So I think that's the main reason that he wasn't signed. But I think it gives them some hope for the rest of the season. I was pleasantly surprised that Christian McCaffrey wound up with that number of targets from PJ Walker, who is a scrambling quarterback and theoretically, might not have checked down that much, might have rather run in those situations. But he dialed up the checkdowns to Christian McCaffrey, and that was obviously a very positive thing for his fantasy owners.
Yeah, so much disrespect against the XFL and PJ Walker last week. Come on, man. Great game for the Panthers. And by the way, I talked about in the solo pod some. This Panthers defense is underrated, man. Second in yards per play allowed on the season, and so that was one of the reasons I felt a little uncomfortable with James Conner. We talked about that Sunday morning. Panthers defense can really play when they get going.
Yeah, and they are loaded up with cornerbacks on defense. They've got Dante Jackson, they've got Stephon Gilmore, they've got AJ Bouye, they've got, CJ Henderson. They have a ton of quality talents at cornerback, like just an embarrassment of riches at a position where nobody has depth.
Sure. And you could go back and talk about the draft where they took J.C. Horn over Justin Fields over Mac Jones if you want to.
J.C. Horn, yeah.
Yep, exactly. Let's go to the Bears. Bears will come out of their bye at home against the Ravens. If you remember before the bye, it was the David Montgomery show. I would expect that. Again, obviously not the best spot against the Ravens, but they do get the Lions and the Cardinals after this. Any thoughts on the Bears as they come out of their bye?
Yeah, I'm just hoping that the upward trajectory for Justin Fields continues because he was the number 4 and number 10 I believe, fantasy quarterback in each of his last 2 starts. They're letting him run. As long as he's running, first of all, it adds another element to their offense. And, and I mean, he could throw the ball deep. So as long as he can combine those 2 traits, and those are his 2 greatest characteristics, a dynamic playmaker with the ball in his hands, and he could throw the ball downfield. I mean, that's all we're asking for. Are you drinking prune juice?
No, man.
Is that what that is, man?
I'm addicted to peach Snapple. Like, I actually have a problem. I drink like at least 1 peach Snapple a day, and these things have so much sugar. It's so bad for you, but I can't stop. I'm literally addicted to prune juice. I mean, man, I know I'm old, but prune juice. I mean, come on. Dallas. So Dallas saw the return of Michael Gallup, and I thought it went kind of as expected. Like, I wasn't overly excited to play Michael Gallup. I actually didn't play him as part of my Dak doubles in DFS this past week. Gallup played 41 out of 62 snaps, 22 routes on 35 dropbacks, 16% target share. Like, that's all in line with what we expected. He'll have some big games. I think he'll have a lot of duds, though, kind of because there's so much target competition. Speaking of target competition, Gallup's return is not great for Dalton Schultz. It's not great for Amari Cooper, and we kind of saw that come to light. I know it was a game where they didn't need to throw a ton, but yeah, I mean, Gallup just is another guy that needs to get fed. What do you see out of Dallas's romp over the Falcons?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, we kind of expected not necessarily a result this lopsided, but, we expected the Cowboys to show up, take care of business here. The Falcons were coming off with that upset of New Orleans. Dallas was coming off the down game against Denver. That's kind of how these things go. The Cowboys were a really good team. Showed it. You're right. I mean, Dak Prescott only had 31 pass attempts in this game because the Falcons could not stay competitive. CeeDee Lamb went off in the first half, not a whole lot in the second half. And then the other dudes really didn't have to do very much. So, and then, Zeke punched in a couple short ones, and that was kind of all they needed. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Dallas doesn't want Dak to throw it 40 times. I mean, he will, but they don't want him to play like that. I played Dak in cash, actually was a little bit lucky to get there on efficiency. I mean, obviously he had a very, very good game.
Hopefully we can get like a 40-45 attempt game here against Kansas City from Dallas.
Oh my God. I mean, Dallas, Kansas City, this is the stuff that fantasy dreams are made of. We'll be talking about that on Friday for sure. Detroit. So shout out to Detroit. They're not going to go 0-17 this season. They get a tie against Mason Rudolph in a cold and kind of wet Pittsburgh setting. We thought Jared Goff would really struggle here. I didn't think he'd struggle this bad. They went so run heavy, even with Jamal Williams out again. DeAndre Swift, 33 carries. I mean, Jamar Jefferson actually was looking like he was going to have a pretty good game. And then he hurts his ankle. For the deep dynasty bros out there, Jamar Jefferson, kind of unfortunate there. But yeah, I mean, just an ugly game for Jared Goff. TJ Hawkinson, 26 routes on 32 dropbacks. Gets 1 target for a 4% share. Obviously disappointing. Would not read too much into it other than understanding how low Hawkinson's floor can be as part of this offense. What'd you see out of Detroit's tie in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, and with no Jamal Williams, and even with those other dudes contributing, Godwin Igwebuike also had an incredible 42-yard touchdown run. He looked like the old Jaguars running back Fred Taylor with his crazy legs. But I mean, making guys miss. I mean, that was an awesome run from a dude who's kind of old, and he used to play defensive back, and I think he played in the XFL or the AAF, and what an awesome play for him. But even with those guys contributing around him, DeAndre Swift had 33 touches in this game, and I mean, didn't even really have the big plays that certainly that his teammates had. But I mean, he was a monster in terms of workload. You like to see that that's just in his range of potential outcomes, that the Lions are willing to feed him that much work.
Yeah. I mean, 33 carries, and 3 catches also. 36 touches for DeAndre Swift is not something that anybody could have really projected before the season. But man, I mean, DeAndre Swift is awesome.
Actually, a big storyline here was that Dan Campbell, coming out of the bye, overtook play calling duties from Anthony Lynn. Anthony Lynn is a run first guy. Dan Campbell is even more so. I didn't know that was possible, but it is. I mean, he's just dialing up, run play after run play after run play. I expect him, since they finally almost got a win, I would expect Dan Campbell to continue to handle the play calling duties for Detroit.
Yeah, at Cleveland next week will be the Lions. They'll try to run the ball again after we saw what Ramondre Stevenson did to the Browns in week 10. I know. I'm interrupting the video. Wah. But if you're enjoying this video and want to see more fantasy football and DFS content like it, please just take 2 seconds, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button. Really does go a long way for us, and we'd appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and now back to the show. Let's get to Green Bay. One of the big stories of the week is this injury to Aaron Jones. And so I thought it looked like when it first happened, Aaron Jones might be done for the year. Turns out just an MCL sprain, out 1 to 2 weeks. And we don't root for anybody to get hurt. But I mean, I have so much AJ Dillon in season long in best ball. And part of the thesis was he has standalone value, which he's had. Because even before this injury, AJ Dillon was getting more carries in games than Aaron Jones. And then if something happened to Aaron Jones, I mean, AJ Dillon's going to go absolutely nuclear. He's played well in the pass game, and way better than I thought that he could. And so obviously I'm excited for this spot for AJ Dillon over the next 1 to 2 weeks. I don't know a lot about Patrick Taylor, who I expect to be AJ Dillon's backup. I don't know if you have a scouting report on him or anything else on Green Bay.
Yeah, Patrick Taylor. I remember asking Mike Renner of PFF about him, because he's one of these Memphis running backs. You know, they've had Tony Pollard, Antonio Gibson.
Yeah.
I know I'm missing someone.
Darrell Henderson.
Yeah. You know, and he was also in the mix there. Renner hadn't even heard of him. You know, and Renner knows like all the dudes, you know. Mm-hmm. So, but I mean, he's a big back. He's 6'3", 227. That's pretty much all that I really know about him. I'll have more in matchups this week, but he's a guy that, you know, he's one of these guys that you, especially in deeper bench leagues, you put him at the end of your bench and you see what happens. Aaron Jones has had MCL problems before. I know it's only supposed to be a 1 to 2 week injury, but these things can recur. You know, again, he's had this injury before. And so Patrick Taylor is suddenly a guy that is, is worth stashing in deeper bench leagues.
Yeah. And obviously AJ Dillon, I think we haven't finished up projections yet, but I'm quite confident that AJ Dillon is going to be one of the best values on the week. Sites left his prices a little bit too short. Speaking of injuries, unfortunately for the Rams, we found out Saturday Robert Woods is going to miss the rest of the season after blowing out his knee. They're going to go forward with Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, and Odell Beckham. Now, Odell Beckham was eased in, in a big way. Like, they could have used him last night in that game against the 49ers, but he only ran 11 routes on 46 Matthew Stafford dropbacks, played far behind Ben Skowronek. Obviously, I don't expect Odell to keep playing behind Ben Skowronek. I still don't know how much Odell can give them going forward. It's clear McVay wants to keep playing this 11 personnel, 3 wide receiver personnel on almost every snap. Now that kind of the dust has settled here, we know Odell is in, we know Robert Woods is out. What is your Odell outlook going forward the rest of the season?
Yeah, it's just going to be very, very week to week. I mean, they try to get him the ball early. They did a little bit, but it looked like there was a major miscommunication on Stafford's first interception, where, they were not on the same page. That was clear. That was very ambitious for them to try to really involve him early on. And I think after that, they kind of backed off him a little bit, I think. I don't know. I don't have super, super high hopes for him. It's just going to be a week-to-week situation. He's probably going to be highly, highly inconsistent. The Rams have some pass protection problems right now. Matthew Stafford only took 2 sacks in this game. But this is the second game in a row where his protection kind of failed him. And, he was really well protected early in the season. Sean McVay likes to run a lot of empty backfield stuff where there's, no ability to max protect. And so when your offensive line is getting beat, there's no help there in the backfield. And that's how you see these sacks that'll just happen. Like, a dude will just shoot right up the middle and boom, he's hitting Stafford. Stafford's taking some big hits. Stafford is a really, really tough dude. But, they may have to change their offense a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, on the Odell thing, like I think Van Jefferson is actually like pretty good. And I know he dropped a touchdown last night, but it wouldn't surprise me if Van was actually higher targeted than Odell the rest of the way. Like I think that's definitely in the range of outcomes. Also, I was happy to see Tyler Higby get into the end zone. Like he's been so close to touchdowns so many times this year. He barely got in there last night. Also, of course, caused that pick six.
Yeah,
but
he had a bad game, man.
Yeah, he called it. The pick six was bad. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he had another bad drop. I mean, I was hoping for more, but you're right. I mean, he's a talented player.
Minnesota, we were kind of talking about the Justin Jefferson squeaky wheel stuff last week. I'm not sure that's it, but he's so good, man. Scheme him the ball. They did that in this game. 11 targets, 9-143, 0. Good win going on the road for the Vikings. What you see out of their win in LA?
Yeah, pretty much the same as you. I mean, that's the big story is that, they kind of realize, hey, we got to pump Justin Jefferson with targets. They knew that they were going to have to go score points against the Chargers. They were really down defensively. I mean, they were missing Harrison Smith, Patrick Peterson, Danielle Hunter, Michael Pierce, a ton of dudes. They knew they had to go score. They filled up Justin Jefferson with target. He just stays open. He wins at every level of the field. He can win in the slot. He can win outside. He's already one of the best route runners in football. I mean, they need to give him 10 targets every single game. I understand that they want to run the ball. That's fine. But, I mean, this is one of the best receivers in the game.
Man, I've been playing so much Justin Jefferson. I've been playing so much Dalvin Cook, too. And Rich Rebar, friend of the show, had a tweet today about Dalvin has gotten stopped at the 1 yard line more than any other running back in the league and then not gotten in on the following play. 5 times this year, Dalvin's been stopped on the 1 yard line and not gotten in subsequently. I mean, Dalvin's ready for an eruption game, man. I mean, Justin Jefferson was and Steph Diggs was, and we'll get to that. And those guys went off. But, man, I mean, Dalvin's ready for an eruption game as well.
Tyler Conklin only had 11 yards in this game, but he did score 2 touchdowns. And I was looking at Darren Armani of FFPC of FantasyMojo.com. He was showing all the players that, hey, if you drafted them in FFPC leagues, which is, tight end premium, what guys have like the best win rates right now. And Tyler Conklin was one of the top tight ends. So kudos if you drafted him.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that outside of Thielen, who's clearly getting hit by the age model, they do scheme stuff to tight end, around the red zone. I mean, they 100% do. Saints. So they decided to go with Trevor Simeon again over Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill only had 5 quarterback snaps in this game. He had 1 snap at running back, 1 snap at tight end, 11 snaps at wide receiver. I don't know, man. Without Kamara, obviously everybody played Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram performed well in DFS. We'll see what Kamara's status is. It's just so hard for me to get excited for this offense. They play the Eagles next, and the Eagles have been running this extreme run-heavy scheme as well. So it looks like a really boring game, at least from a fantasy perspective. But what'd you see at a New Orleans game against the Titans?
Well, Trevor Simeon, I thought he struggled for pretty much the first 3 quarters of the Atlanta game where they wound up losing by 2 points to the Falcons. But he did kind of rally him back in the fourth quarter. And then in this game, I mean, they moved the ball on offense. He averaged almost 9 yards per pass attempt, another 2-point loss here. And I think that they're probably not going to shift it all to Taysom until Trevor Simeon really starts bringing them down. I think eventually he will. But, I mean, Sean Payton's also one of the best schematic, offensive minds in the league, and he can make, nothing into something. Yeah. I mean, we've seen them be competitive with this group of just garbage skill position players. I mean, with all due respect to some of these guys, like Deontay Harris has been the number 1 receiver for Trevor Simeon now for the last 3 games. And he's playing 39% of the snaps. He's 5'6", third year undrafted free agent. I mean, this is what they're dealing with. And, it's not fun for fantasy.
Yeah. Oh, no. Only other note I have on New Orleans is that Adam Troutman is actually running a ton of routes. And Adam Troutman's a talented guy. He's kind of playing the role that maybe a lot of people thought he would have before the season and he didn't, but now he is. So it's just something to keep an eye on if they can ever get a good pass game going.
And he's got 7, 6, and 7 targets over his last 3. So, and now he's playing the Eagles. And we know we like to attack them with tight ends.
Let's go to the Giants. Saquon Barkley, I think, is going to be close to 100%. I think he could have come back before the bye, but he had a COVID positive test, and so he sits out that game, sits out the bye. Problem is, he has to play Tampa on Monday night. Ideally, they get him involved in the pass game there. But, there's some optimism for Saquon going forward. Eagles, Dolphins, Chargers, Cowboys, Eagles next. I also want to see if Kadarius Toney is healthy because something was off in the game before the bye there. Also, anything on the Giants as they come out of their bye, get ready to face the Bucks.
No, sorry, my mom's trying to call me. Oh God. No, I don't have anything to add to that. It's just it all comes down to the injury stuff.
Yeah, we'll see on all these guys. I think that I do think that they actually might have everyone healthy, in which case they actually have a pretty loaded skill set core. Let's get to the Eagles. Run rate on the Eagles continues to just be absolutely through the roof. And it's like coincided with Miles Sanders getting hurt. They decided to go with this extreme run heavy approach, and it's worked. I mean, they've played better. It's just hard. I still thought Jalen Hurts was a really good play, and he was having a really good game until the game got out of hand in the second half. Lose Dallas Goedert to a concussion. I just wanted to put Tyree Jackson on people's radar because Tyree Jackson's a really good athlete. We'll see if Goddard can come back for this game. But Tyree Jackson was someone I was excited about in preseason. They also have Jack Stoll, who's more of like I don't know too much about him, but he went to Nebraska. I think he's just like more of a blocker. But they play the Saints next, which is obviously a difficult matchup for them. Anything on the Eagles, who went to Denver and got a win? Easy win.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Jalen Hurts after sort of like a 2-game slump from a fantasy standpoint, get it right back going. He's the number 7 overall fantasy quarterback in per game scoring so far this year. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. At some point, I think that Quez Watkins is going to have a chance to pop up for a big game. This might be it against New Orleans. The Saints have given up a lot of fantasy points to wide receivers so far this year, and we probably know that Marshawn Lattimore is going to be on Devontae Smith. We'll talk about this a lot more on Friday, but I do think that Quez Watkins is somebody, if you're searching at wide receiver, I say go pick him up. He's playing a ton of snaps. He's running a ton of routes.
Interesting. I mean, Quez makes big plays, man. I mean, he's I know. As much as I thought Jalen Reagor would be good, I mean, it seems like Quez Watkins is a better option for the Eagles right now. San Francisco last night, I mean, Jimmy G only has to attempt 19 passes, and I think this is the way that they want to play. 19 attempts for Jimmy G, 37 running back carries, which is just absolutely absurd. 27 for Eli Mitchell, 10 for Jeff Wilson. If Jimmy G was forced into more, though, I mean, George Kittle would have gone off. I mean, they could not stop George Kittle whatsoever. Really good win for San Francisco last night. What did you see out of them?
Yeah, I mean, they had a great game plan, both offensively and defensively. They generated a ton of pressure on defense. They created turnovers, and they didn't really have, big run plays. Debo had a couple of nice runs, Debo Samuel. But, they kind of just chipped away at the Rams, and they stayed committed to the running game. And I mean, so like a lot of times that's how Kyle Shanahan wants to win. And because they were so lopsided from a run pass perspective, you look in the receiving box score and, there's not a whole lot there. George Kittle was fine, 5 for 50 and 1. You're right. He looked unstoppable out there, but he did not have, did not have a big, a truly big box score. And Brandon Ayuk kind of went back into the Brandon Ayuk, though. I mean, when he gets the ball in his hands, I mean, he is a playmaker after the catch. That's who he was in college at Arizona State. That's who he is in the NFL. It's just a matter of volume. His participation in the game is where we want it to be. And so is his talent.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be better days for this Pats game because they're looking really efficient. Jaguars, Vikings, Seahawks, Bengals next for San Francisco, and they have the most absurd schedule in the playoffs. I mean, in the fantasy playoffs, Bengals, Falcons, Titans over weeks 15, 16, 17. I'm sorry. Yes, Bengals, Falcons, Titans, exactly. Okay, let's go to Seattle. I mean, Russ comes back from this finger thing, and I don't think the finger was an issue. I mean, he said it wasn't. He was awful. I mean, this might be the worst game that I've ever seen Russ play. And normally he's like the most efficient quarterback in the league. The target shares for DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett were fine. They just could not connect at all. And now, Pete Carroll's all pissed off. They played poorly. Well, what do you think Pete Carroll's going to tell the offensive coordinator and the play callers to do establish the shit out of the run, right? Because anytime he gets tilted and the offense plays bad, he's like, oh, we got to run it. So they're home against Arizona next. I hope that Kyler plays and this can turn into like some back and forth. But if Seattle has their way, I feel like they're going to try to run to win. What do you think out of Seattle and Russ's return? I mean, it was an ugly return for Russ.
It was so bad. It was painful to watch this game. I mean, especially because, I had higher expectations of the game and it didn't come anywhere close to, it was 0-0 entering the fourth quarter. It was an absolutely painful game. If you had anything invested in this whatsoever, it had to be a confluence of factors with Russ. He had Lockett open, on several occasions, and just straight up airmailed him several times. You don't see that out of Russ. He doesn't look as dynamic athletically as he used to, and they really aren't really letting him run very much. This was actually, I think, his best running game of the season in terms of the box score finish, and he had 5 for 32 on the ground. That's not really a part of his game. It hasn't been a part of his game when he's been healthy this season. You hope for that efficiency. The Packers, this is another situation where the Packers had a great game plan because they just took away the perimeter weapons for Seattle. Like, they were not going to let him make big plays down the field. They were almost daring Seattle to run. And when Seattle did run, they weren't effective running it. And then when they try to dial up the deep shots, they just smothered DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. They have, and speaking of Mike Renner, he pointed out the Packers have the best safety tandem in the league right now. And I would agree with that after watching that Seattle game.
Yeah. I think Tyler Lockett actually led the league in air yards this past week. And I'm sure he'll be on the buy low model this week. Comes out tomorrow. Let's go to the Bucks. There was a lot of talk around Chris Godwin's foot or ankle or whatever was wrong. He turned out to be fine, but they just played poorly, man, and really poorly considering the spot against Washington. They barely had the ball. Antonio Brown didn't play. Rob Gronkowski didn't play. I think that will help their red zone efficiency when those guys are back. But still, just a really bad game for Tom Brady. I did note Ronald Jones only played 1 snap in this game. Leonard Fournette, 31, Gio, 14 when they're trailing the whole time. Obviously, Lenny's going to be out there. Gio is going to be out there on the clearest of passing downs. Ronald Jones just isn't going to play at all. What do you see out of the Bucks?
Yeah, it appears that the Bucks have indeed said enough already with Ronald Jones. One thing that we used to talk about on the Fantasy Feast with Ross Tucker, and it was, this notion was reciprocated by Ross, who actually played in the NFL, is that teams coming off their buys, we always think of it as a good thing. Always. Intuitively, it just makes so much sense. Hey, they're rested. They had this time to get over, any like nicks and bruises that they might have had. And, it's a great thing. Right. But, and Ross reciprocated this, but it also, like, for some teams, they get out of their routine and then they come back and it kind of throws them off kilter. And you see a team like the Buccaneers, who might be the best team in the NFL, just play like shit, against one of the worst teams in the NFL. The Seahawks also were coming off of a bye. So I think that that's something to consider as to their performance. But, it's just something that I think is interesting to bring up as to why some of these, teams that we consider to be like juggernauts even might have a down game after they get out of their routine. And Bruce Arians was even talking about it. He was like, we had like good practices. I couldn't believe, the product that we put out there. But I don't know, just something to talk about.
Yeah, no, I always assume that it's better for a team not to just rest physically, but to rest mentally, like reset your mind and have 2 weeks to game plan for one opponent. I always think of it as a good thing too, but yeah, it's an interesting point that maybe it's not always a good thing. Last team we're going to do is the Washington football team. Pretty clear that, speaking of bye weeks, Washington football team used that time to get Antonio Gibson healthy because he was back way out in front of Jared Patterson, 24-4. In carries, still only 15 routes though. Like, you can't expect more than 1 or 2 catches in a game for Antonio Gibson. I'd also note that Ricky Seals-Jones got hurt, and we're going to talk about this guy John Bates probably if RSJ and Logan Thomas can't play this week. But yeah, what you see out of Washington, really good win over the Bucs.
Yeah, I mean, and it wasn't really a big fantasy game for anyone, really. I mean, I know that Gibson got the 2 scores, but I mean, he also would, continue to play behind J.D. McKissick in the passing game. Everything got spread out. I mean, just looking at the box score, like, 10 dudes caught the ball, in this game from Tyler Heineke. Heineke's been pretty good in fantasy. He was a top 10 dude on the week this week. And I think he's probably going to keep the job for the rest of the season with Ryan Fitzpatrick's return seemingly nowhere in sight.
Yeah, I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is officially done, actually. So yeah, GG. Sad times for one of the true GOATs, Ryan Fitzpatrick. All right. That is going to do it for this NFC Team by Team pod. If you have not yet subscribed to this podcast, we'd really appreciate it if you do so. Anywhere podcasts are found, it is free to subscribe. For Evan. For Producer Luke, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.